Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another Sales Hacker podcast. And today we have a very, very special guest, Dmitry Dragolev, who's going to be talking you through how to supercharge your customer acquisition with 4 unconventional outreach tactics. Also joining me is Jack Kosakowski, who is our phenomenal director of social selling and social media here at Sales Hacker. He's also the CEO of the U.S. division of the Creation Agency. And me, of course, it's your boy Gaetano. I run digital marketing here at Sales Hacker. And without further ado, we'll just jump right into it. But first, a few housekeeping items for you. So the first thing to be aware of is that if you need to jump off this webinar for any reason whatsoever, we are recording it. So you will get that follow-up email with the recorded session, just in case you can't stick through all the way to the end. And with that being said, I think I'll introduce my hosts and my co-hosts, and we'll get right into this thing. So welcome Dmitry and Jack.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this is a little bit different route than Sales Hacker goes, so it'll be fun to hear a little bit new, unconventional ways of doing something.
Yeah, we're going to get into the unconventional ways of doing outreach. And for you guys that don't know Dmitry, he is a outreach guru. Him and I have worked together on SEO and lead generation projects before at my former place of employment at Pipedrive. We've done some amazing work together, so I thought it would only be right to bring him on board and discuss a little bit about how salespeople can adapt this sort of unique way of performing outreach that works. So just a quick little quote here on Dmitry. He makes things happen. After putting together our biggest AppSumo bundle, Dmitry brought the momentum and helped us sell out a week early. If you're an entrepreneur, I'd say you should get a taste of the energy Dmitry brings to the table. That's from Noah Kagan from sumo.com. So let's talk a little bit about that. How was your time at working with Noah Kagan, Dmitry?
It was cool. It was fun. That was when AppSumo was still starting out, so there was no sumo.com yet. It was just AppSumo deals, and we were doing tons of bundles. But they were just starting out. This was the second bundle. It was a designer bundle. It was very scrappy. Noah was traveling through Israel with his girlfriend that he broke up with shortly after, but she was his first designer for AppSumo.com.
Nice.
And it just kind of brought on a lot of traffic and really just a lot of influencers sharing it to get them pretty good numbers in terms of selling it out and making a lot of money. But this was like very early days, so he really needed the help to get. He didn't have the big email list yet, so.
Right. And that's what a lot of attendees, on this webinar right now they're in that same position too. They don't have a massive email list. They don't have the brand ammunition and firepower that they need to kind of help scale their outreach and do it with ease without being like this unknown sort of brand that no one's heard of. How do you break through that? And we're going to talk about that today. So
cool.
Let's continue forward.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. So let me welcome also Jack. A lot of you may know Jack. Some of you may not. But according to Coca Sexton from Hootsuite, Jack may very well be the best practitioner of social selling of all time that he's ever known. No fluff. Always focused on ROI. No tolerance for the status quo. Always measuring the effectiveness of real outreach and not kind of considering those purely quote unquote vanity metrics. So Jack, welcome aboard and feel free to introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So, I love the Sales Hacker community. I love doing these things because I think we'll get you to think outside of the box instead of the same mindset and all the different jargon that you hear every day. There's so many ways to get a competitive advantage, and I think this is going to be one of those strategies you can add to your toolkit.
Absolutely. And by the way, for the audience, as we're going through the webinar, feel free to just plop in any questions that you have. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. We'll try to jump into the deck, but as you have questions, we'll do our best to get the questions in there as we can. And if we can't get through all of them, we'll save most of them for the end, and we'll get them in there. Just a little bit about myself. I've ran conversion-focused SEO programs at Pipedrive, and Dmitry and I worked on this huge undertaking project where we ranked #1 for very difficult keyword sales management, and that piece of content and keyword is still #1 to this day, outranking Wikipedia. So that was a good time, Dmitry. But enough about me and all of us. Let's just get right into the presentation. So Dmitry, go ahead and take it away, man.
All right, awesome. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. It's awesome to be on this webinar. I'm going to jump right into it. If any of you are listening to this right now and you're thinking, how does this apply to me tomorrow, day after? How am I going to apply this stuff, this very slide right here, or the next concept I'm talking about? I want you guys to just put a question in or email me if you're watching a replay. But since you're live on right now, I want you to put in a question and say, Dimitri, how does this, and then just put whatever you can about the slide apply to me? How can I actually put this to use and get exposure out of it, get something out of it in a week, maybe in 2 weeks, or maybe in the next few days? Whatever concept I'm talking about should be applied within a week or so. So I want this to be as practical and actionable as possible for you guys. So with that, the first thing I want to start with is just all of us, whoever is on this webinar right now, has a business, has some type of small gig, might be a big business, might be a small business, might be something that you're working on, consulting project. You want influencers and press and journalists talking about you. You want exposure. You want traffic. This is a known. Everybody knows about this. We want more customers. And we're going to get more customers by exposure from influencers and press and journalists. Now, when you don't know anything, you'd love to be the person that I didn't know how to get exposure, right? 10 years ago. But I dreamed of the time when I can just write for Entrepreneur Magazine, hit publish, and get my guest article published on Entrepreneur Magazine and get that exposure. But I didn't know how to do it. I wanted my software, just reach out, I didn't even have software that I built back then, but, I wanted it to be featured in TechCrunch. All of us are dreaming about this, right? We want to be interviewed on Forbes magazine and get exposure that way as well. Or we want these people to have millions of followers on Twitter to be tweeting about our brand. And the natural question becomes is, do we pay somebody to do it? You guys are in sales, you know that, anything good costs money. My answer to you is no. You can actually do this, all of this, all on your own, 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. That's all I say. Well, I tell people the bare minimum you should invest in this kind of stuff. You can actually make it happen for yourself. And, Gaetano was mentioning, this is what's possible if you do it on your own. We worked with Brad. There's Brad there. We worked on this project where we wanted to rank #1 on sales management for the term sales management. And I was coaching the team through it. And we're going through the process, but I didn't want to outsource this to some other firm to kind of do this on their own. I wanted the person involved at Pipedrive, the head of content there, to be working on this stuff and getting this to the top. And through a combination of outreach, getting these 4 tactics that I'll be sharing with you today, we're able to outrank Wikipedia. But not only that, 0 slot, the very top slot that shows a little picture, that little picture is actually coming from us. It still links to the Wikipedia link, but the picture itself links to our blog posts as well. And this was a combination of just doing a lot of strategizing around your outreach, getting in contact with the right people, creating the right piece of content, and getting guest posts published. But stepping down a bit, Pipedrive is a well-known brand. Here's Martin, right? Martin was a one-man show. He was a one-man show, and you didn't know anything about marketing. He wasn't really savvy with sales. He was just a developer, and he developed a product that lets you, keep focused, not browse Facebook most of the day. He created a strategy with the help of some of the tactics that I'm going to be sharing with you today, where he was able to get 1 million views of his Quora answer and get 800 customers within 24 hours. This is just some of the stuff that's possible with the stuff I'll be talking about. And here we're finally, this is another great example, has never written a guest article in his life. He wrote a guest article called How Trump's First Week in Office Proves He's a Bat for Business. And that article was featured on the homepage of Fast Company for 18 hours. He was able to get 500 new customers in duration of those 18 hours just by having that article published that he wrote. So you guys can do this. Whoever's listening to this, you can actually apply this tomorrow and next week. And if you can't, I urge you to, get back to me and tell me your issues with applying this stuff.
No,
But you
I'm
should
gonna,
be
I'm gonna
able to
chime in
apply
here.
it.
I'm going to chime in here
Sure.
one second, Dimitri. So we have a lot of B2B sales reps that probably are watching this. So if I'm a B2B sales rep, how would this be relevant as you're going through it? Just setting the kind of the mindset of thinking through this is, I'm a B2B sales rep. How can I leverage these strategies to help me, create sales conversations, strengthen sales conversations, or influence sales conversations in the sales process?
Certainly, yeah. So anytime that you have links on the internet about, on publications, on Forbes, on Fortune magazine, on Newsweek, where you have been mentioned along with other types of brands, or just purely, just pure mentions of your brand, of your business, of your CEO, of your head of sales, whoever it is on your team, even if it's not an article about your brand, about your company, around whatever you're doing, even if it's just a quote from your CEO, striking up a conversation with somebody, whether it's a sales conversation or trying to get somebody on the call to do a demo, or maybe you're trying to close a deal, or maybe you're stuck in the follow-up sequence where it's just kind of out there and people are not responding to you, and they start a conversation, pinging them back with saying, hey, listen, we were just in Forbes magazine, by the way, and our CEO was there, and we actually thought of you because, in the next roundabout, would love to have you guys join us in the next Fortune mention, or maybe giving you more exposure that way, or just showing that you guys are already in the magazine itself. Will start the conversation back up. It kind of livens it. And so what I usually tell people who are, doing sales specifically, these types of, publications, whether a journalist mentions you somewhere, whether you publish a guest article somewhere, or maybe it's just a quick little mention through an influencer, it just serves as a great way to strike that conversation and continue that conversation, and to bring that conversation back to life, because a lot of it becomes very stale. It's grinding work. You're just trying to get the person on, and that person kind of wants to get on, but it just gives you credibility as a brand, as a person who's doing the sales outreach, saying, listen, I'm not just saying all this stuff is great because this is my stuff. Here's somebody else who, published something on a well-known publication or a group that's saying the same thing. And that, third-party validation really helps any sales process to go smooth.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this, another strategy is thinking about, are you a short-term sales rep, or are you a long-term sales rep, right? Is this a career? Is this something you're going to do the rest of your life? Is the industry that you're going to be in it for the rest of your life? Thinking about social and kind of tying in, the trust and credibility piece of, hey, I'm going to be doing this for a really long time. I want people to know the value that I bring and the credibility that I have, and leveraging these pieces and putting them on your LinkedIn profile, pinning them to your Twitter profile, so that you can kind of do that validation piece before you even get into the sales conversation. I think that's the difference between a long-term sales rep who doesn't want to beg for business anymore versus kind of a short-term sales rep that's not going to go the extra mile and do these extra things to prove to a buyer that they should want to have a conversation.
And think about it as a relationship too. You're building a relationship with your end consumer. Somebody who goes and finds sales management and goes to that blog post and reads that blog post, they already consumed that information. They already know Pipe Drive and equate it with the word sales management. So again, anytime your brand or your name is seen next to a piece of information that potential customer is looking for, it kind of it starts building that relationship with you, even though you still haven't talked to them yet. So this kind of stuff not only adds credibility, but builds relationships with your...
Yeah, exactly. And Sales Hacker, by the way, is a destination that adds credibility for a lot of these brands. Like, for example, we just published something today, a case study on how a SaaS brand went from 0 to 2.5 million in ARR in 6 months. And that's the kind of stuff that they're going to be able to use as collateral for their own sales process. They're going to be able to say, hey, look what we just published on Sales Hacker, and it has step by step on how they do this, and it adds credibility, and it's an automatic value piece, and it just breaks the monotony of, like you said, Dimitri and Jack, like, this is a grind. You're sending the same old messaging. You're seeing it over and over again. I'm in marketing. I get bombarded with this stuff. So if I see something with, real numbers attached to it that shows credibility, it's going to open my mind to say, okay, I'm a little bit curious about this, and I'm more willing to have a conversation with this person just based on the fact that there's credibility behind what they're pitching.
Yeah.
And it's credibility because of the source, right? I mean, that's why companies pay Gardner,
Right.
$100,000 a year to just write about them and talk about them. And I mean, I think this goes back to, how do you do that for free, right? I mean, how do you leverage that same mentality in your professional career to help you, close more deals?
Right. So let's just jump. I'll go through the tactics of how you can do this on your own without paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I want to get into who these influencers are. I'm going to go through this kind of quick, but you guys feel free to ask afterwards as well. Influencers, anybody who has an audience, right? It could be a journalist. It could be somebody who's got 10 million followers on Twitter or Facebook, or has got a popular LinkedIn group. Anybody. Could be a journalist, blogger, could be an investor, even a celebrity. And I'll show you Ashton Kutcher and how I built relationships, with folks like Ashton Kutcher in this very presentation coming up. This is the founder of WordPress. Again, this is a great guy to build relationships with. Tim Ferriss, another great example of building relationships with. Gary Vaynerchuk, another different type of an influencer from a typical reporter like Christina or Andrea, who controls all the guest posting on Entrepreneur magazine. Different type of influencer for me, right? If I want to post on Entrepreneur, all of these folks have an audience or have some type of trigger control to an audience that will open up the right type of introduction to me. And Ashton Kutcher is a great investor, right, in startups. So he's really, he's investing a lot, and so he has a lot of connections to startups for me. That's why I decided to build a relationship with him. But at the end of the day, a lot of times you make a list of these folks, and it's just useful to remember that an influencer is anybody who has your audience or has to an audience that you want to get to. These people are the ones that you're selling to, right? You want those people to know who you are before you start a cold conversations with them. And each influencer needs a personalized conversation starter. So quick examples here before we get to the 4 tactics. But Daryl is a reporter at TechCrunch. And now say you're a sales rep, you're like, listen, I just care about selling. I'm like, all right, you want some third party validity, you want some exposure on other sites, and so you want to build a relationship with TechCrunch, right? Naturally, when you want to write something for TechCrunch, you want to be the person that emails them and they're like, sure, we'll publish this. And then you can reference somebody as a client, and then you say, listen, would love to chat with you more. That's a natural way to start a sales conversation versus, a cold email. So I want to build a relationship with Daryl. I don't know anything about Hue light bulbs, but I know that Daryl is all about Hue light bulbs. So I go out there and I say, listen, I saw that you write a lot about Hue light bulbs. I found a great demo here. Check this out. This looks amazing. You haven't covered this kind of stuff before. So he says, thank you. And then he includes the demo in TechCrunch. I have no relationships to the demo, to whatever the Hue light bulb thing he's actually interested in. I just found and became useful to him. Now he is indebted to me to answer at least 1 or 2 questions, right? And this is the position I want Daryl to be in, because he's a reporter at TechCrunch and I want an in there, right? So here's the email that I sent to Ashton Kutcher. It took me about a year to compile all these folks on my podcast. And I used to have a speaker series out in California, and I religiously followed everybody to Ashton Kutcher would mention in his Twitter and see who he looks up to. And these are the people that he looked up to, right? He looked up to Tim Ferriss, CTO Pandora, Eventbrite. And so what I did is I went after these people, and I got them on my podcast, I got them on my show, and I got them to come in person and interview them as well. We had an event for each and every one. When I had compiled all of that, I had put together this email and say, listen, I've had everybody but you on the show. I'd love to have you on the show. What do you say? And so he responded with this, hey, big fan of those guys. Kelly Donnelly is on my, she handles my calendar. So I didn't indebt him in any way there because it's really hard to, do that with him. But at least I showed him a lot of value up front, and he responded saying kind of thank you. So this is the type of conversation starter I want you guys to think about when you start conversations with those people that control that have the keys to your audience, right? Those influencers, those journalists, those bloggers.
And I think this is funny because this, your strategy could be used to do one-to-one prospecting as well, right? I mean, you're reaching out to close the deal of getting publicity, but like what I just saw there is brilliant in the simple fact that you did your research, right? I mean, it took you time to figure out who Ashton Kutcher actually cares about. And the thing is, that goes back to personalization, and I think that was key, and every sales rep should look at what you did there because that is just pure brilliance.
Right, yeah, so it really took some time. So like as a sales rep, I guess, it did a lot of research around the person and what they love to talk about. And I basically went through and took like all the people he's talked about. And I said, listen, I'm going to interview them in detail. And then I said, listen, you're the only one that's missing in this group. I want you to join them because you look up to all these guys. So, and I started that conversation with him.
So Dimitri, how long did that take? Because I think one of the problems with sales right now is that like there's a lack of impatience. Everybody wants to get to their ideal customer so fast, and they don't want to take this time to like build up all the collateral that's necessary to make that introduction. So like, first of all, what would you say to a sales rep that's like itching? They come across someone's LinkedIn profile and they're like, oh my God, this is the perfect prospect. They fit all the criteria and I just want to reach out to them and get them started in a conversation. Like, how much time did this take you? And like, what would you say to people that are just like, they're so kind of hell bent on getting that instant kind of gratification?
So I always say there's this big boat of everybody doing one thing, and this is the one thing that all of us see, those cold emails, those like quick little blurbs of, hey, what's going on? I want to chat. That's like what everybody's doing. Whenever I see somebody's doing like that's happening, I always want to run away from this boat and do something completely different because it's signal versus noise. Like you just don't want to be that person doing scale outreach and just bombarding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people a day with just these like templated messages, because it's just in the long term you're just going to get too exhausted and you're going to be on too many spam lists at the end of the day to really make the strategy work. I mean, it still could potentially give you some leads, but it's just not the sexiest way to go about it. So
what was your subject line for this?
It was basically like the names of the people. I said followed something like followed you, joining, followed you, joining Tim Ferriss, Tom Pandora, Kevin Eventbrite, and others on a speaker series, something like that. So that it was just the names of those people that he really looked up to in his talks, in his tweets and stuff like that. So it really brought out some of the people that he looks up to, basically. So essentially people he mentions a lot, things like that. So yeah, I always say don't do what everybody else is doing. Everybody's saying that as well, but I also I really urge people to just stand back a little bit and just say, like, they don't know you. So if you're going to write an email, say it out loud and be 100% honest to yourself and say, would you say this to that person if you met them out live, at a conference? And if the answer is no, don't send that email. Just be 100% honest with yourself. Read that email out loud. Would you actually say it out loud? And in my case, I would come up and I'd say, listen, this is what I've done. Even with Daryl, I would actually come up there and say, listen, like, you write about Hue light bulbs. I found a cool tutorial about it. Would you want to check it out? I would actually say these things out loud to these people. And if it is, then you can probably send that out. But be 100% honest and always value up front, we can jump into the 4 strategies. So these 4 strategies, I want you guys to kind of remember them because they're the lowest hanging fruit, and you guys can start with this right now, right after this, right? So the first one is becoming a source for an article. And remember, what we're trying to do is earn some credibility so that our sales conversations are much, quicker and easier to close, right? These people already have learned about you on a third-party site somewhere. So you can use, I run a tool called Just Reach Out. You can use something like that to search for the stuff, or you can just subscribe to a free newsletter called helperreporter.com. This is essentially thousands of journalists a day. They put out these queries, and these queries are looking for salespeople. There's a lot of people actually that are looking for salespeople to quote in articles, or they're looking for entrepreneurs, or they're looking for all sorts of types of people to quote in their articles that are going to be published in a week or two. And here's a great example, like using Instagram bots can be a huge boost. They're looking for an Instagram bot service. And, this publication is Forbes. The deadline is 20th of December. So, this was somewhat recent, and last quarter I pulled this, and every day there's thousands of these that come out a day. So we index all of them. We have a search engine for them. But you can also go and just subscribe to these publications like helperreporter.com, which is a newsletter, or you can, there's a lot of these different types. There's SourceBottle, there's ProfNet. But essentially, this is just free press, just sitting there in front of your fingertips. Like, answer a few of these a day, and you probably will get quoted in some publication or other, and just use that Forbes article during your outreach, When you do an outreach, say, listen, I was just in Forbes. Would love to kind of collaborate with you on the next article as well. By the way, this is what you can use that as collateral, basically. So you guys...
The thing is, sales reps don't understand is, like, if you get on the HARO, I call it HARO, H-A-R-O, Helper Reporter, you get on that list, like, you can answer any of these questions. Anybody can answer them. And the thing is, a lot of these content marketers, they're not experts in these fields. Like, they've been given, they've been giving something and said, hey, you need to write about sales acceleration tools. Well, they don't know anything about sales acceleration tools. So all you do is you fill this out, you submit it, and the worst thing that can happen is they say no, and it takes, you're going to go through it, but it's like, it's simple stuff.
So easy. It's insanely easy. You can just boom, send it in, and you guys can play around with it. If you want to go to this link, whoever's watching this live, you can go to http://justreachout.link/ENT, and it should pull up a free, you don't have to sign up or anything, a free thing to play around with it for the word entrepreneur. And you can just respond to these things. But helperreporter.com, HARO, there's tons of these out there now. There's journal requests. There's tons of the stuff on Twitter as well. So,
Dimitri, my one tactical tip that I can give to sales reps right now that they can start doing very easily without any real effort is just start answering one Quora question per week. Because what you'll do over time is you'll build a reservoir of your own quotes so that when it comes time for you to, give a quote about sales automation for somebody that's looking for one, or, you want to pitch a journalist with a very interesting sort of stance that you're taking on a controversial subject, you'll have that content ready for you right there. And then you won't have to think about, oh my God, I'm so busy now with all my pipeline stuff going on. How do I have time to make this content, right? But if you start doing it little by little over time, it's the aggregation of marginal gains theory. You'll have all that content ready for you in your Quora profile, and you'll have stuff ready to go.
Definitely. That's my number 4, actually. I'll be talking about Quora. So this is perfect. This is great.
Nice.
So podcast is another thing. There's a thing called Radio Guest List Podcast, which is kind of like HARO, but for podcasts. We aggregate that and just reach out. But if you wanted to subscribe, I think it costs $5 a month. Radio Guest List is a great one to just be featured on guest lists as well. And they're looking for people every day. So it's just free press sitting there. You can just respond to it every day. And it looks exactly like this. It's it gives you the topics and stuff like this. So you can try it yourself as we go along. Quora and Reddit, I'll talk about this now. So I'm going to go through this whole scenario from the beginning, right? So here's Rebecca. Rebecca is a reporter on VentureBeat, and I want to build a relationship with her because I want her to feature my brand, myself, so I can, improve my sales process. So I read her stuff, and this is the first thing I'm trying to do. I do a little snooping, because that's, to stand out from the crowd. Everybody's doing this big thing, this giant boat, everybody's on it. I want to be on this other boat, right? So I'm snooping around. I'm trying to do research on Becca. I read this article about the Confessions of an Ex-Journalist, and what do? I go on my own blog, and what I edit one of my articles, and I add a little bit about her and her article on my blog, on my own personal blog. After I do that, here it is. I kind of quote her. I take a quote, and I actually mess up some of this stuff here on purpose, because I want to see if she's gonna see it or not. Because so I add like some random crap into the quote, just to see if she actually checks my link when I send it to her. Then I go on Quora and I look at pitching journalists. So essentially what I want to do is I want to reference her and my blog post on Quora and then send it to her. So I want to find some of the top questions about this topic that she cares a lot about. So in your case, it will be all about sales, and you guys know the sales world, and you'll be finding something about sales. But essentially, I find something that I know a lot about, that she's written about, and I answer that question. The question is, what are some rookie mistakes a PR person can make? I know a lot about it. She's written about it. She's a reporter, journalist, right? So what I do is I link my own blog post, but I quote her in the answer. I say, here's a great quote from Rebecca Grant. So I put her quote in there, and I link my my blog post. I do two things. One, I promote my own blog post. The other one, I kind of reference her on there. And this is a fairly popular question that I found on Quora. The next thing I do is I reach out to Rebecca, and I say, hey, I promoted you, actually tweeted it. Would love to kind of hear what are you up to next, kind of thing. Seems like you got a new career coming up. And then she says, I'm glad that you enjoyed the Medium post. I actually left VB to do startup on my own. Thanks for reaching out. So she's thankful that I promoted her on Quora and her article as well. And so what tends to so this type of relationship is starting at a great time, because she's at a new company. Maybe she would end up using my software or something like that. But again, like, this type of outreach is not the same as, hey, I saw that you're doing a new startup. Do you guys have any needs for PR outreach? I'd love to kind of help you out with this kind of stuff. Yeah. Or it builds a relationship in the right way, and it actually
that's straight conversational too. Like that email flow right there, you can tell that's not a template. You took the time to personalize, and it's not hard. But like, if I got an email like this as like somebody who runs marketing, and I just want to get in touch with somebody or whatever the case is, like, I would definitely respond to this. And like, the emails that I get in my inbox, and Jack, you probably get the same ones, they do not look like this at all.
Well, this is where value versus ask comes in, and I think that sales reps, 99% of them, you have to go through your inbox, go through your sent, and you have to go, do I ask every email do I send, is there an ask involved in it, right? And I think that you would find that 99% of reps would go through, and every single email would be, can I get your money? Can I get your time? Can I get something from you, right? Can you get me hired? Can you get me a decision maker? Can you get me a guest blog post if you're in marketing? But what you see Dimitri's doing right here is where he's positioning himself with value versus ask. He's going out of his way to start the conversation without asking for anything. And the funny thing is that conversation just organically flowed and naturally happened with a response. And did you ask her for her time, or did you even ask her where a startup is? I'm sure you'll get deeper into this, but no, you just started the conversation, and that's where most sales reps suck. They don't know how to start a conversation because the only thing they have in their tool belt is ask. They don't understand strategies around value, and that's what you just did here, which is brilliant.
Right. I just want to give value up front. That's how I want to start the relationship, because I want to indebt them enough for them to come back and ask me what I do. So that's the end game with this approach. A lot of time is have them ask me, because then you got more leverage, I pick a lot of this is a great one to check out. If you go to justreachout.link/RET, This is just a good Quora question thread that where we had one of our students answer it, and they were number 1 on 56 answers. They were the first answer up there. And in that answer, they actually started referencing people they want to reach out to and demo their software to. So when you answer a Quora question and say you're the top answer there, then you can start referencing them in there. And then when you're reaching out, you say, listen, I actually answered the Quora question, and it's number 1 out of 50, or let's say maybe 20, or maybe 10, who knows. But you're referencing them and you answer, so you're essentially giving them some free publicity, free traffic, and it might not be that much, and it might not bring them deals, but it's still like they'll be thankful to you for doing that, and you're providing some type of value. This is outside of you trying to get, them published on New York Times or doing something crazy where you're getting them tons of exposure, but it's something attainable that you can just do before reaching out to somebody and in a sales when you're trying to sell them something. And the other thing with Quora and Reddit is you can actually get your answers republished as articles. So you see here this answer was republished on HuffPo, Forbes, and Inc. So when you answer a Quora question, not only can you send that Quora question and say, hey, listen, I've referenced you, I've given you some exposure, would love your feedback on it, that kind of thing. You can actually invest some more time, and there's a whole process behind how to do this, but you can actually turn one of these answers into an article. Like, here's a full-out article by a CEO who's answered the question, and that article became an actual article on Inc. magazine. So now not only do you have referenced some potential customer in your answer on Quora, but you actually turned it into an article on Inc. magazine. This is for sure going to land you the deal of a lifetime, because now you're saying, hey, they're going to reach out to you saying, hey, thanks for referencing me in your Inc. article. So now you become a star in their eyes, and that deal closure will be much faster and easier. So start a conversation with an influencer, promote your content, or promote them in your content, get it republished, and then you can actually pull in some traffic through SEO with this type of approach. This is how this section, this is how Quora stuff would work well. And I know we have 2 more here. I can kind of jump through these rather fast because these are a bit more advanced. But, this one is pretty easy, but, might take a bit more time on your side. Providing data or insights. In your space, it might be around sales. So if you have any sales data in terms of like open rates, click-through rates on emails, any kind of outreach campaigns you're running, lots of bloggers, and whether it's not just sales blogs, or it could be marketing blogs, could be just people that are writing about outreach in general, be interested to feature you as an expert, or maybe have some data that you have in your toolbox to feature you in there. This is how I grew the startup from 0 to 40 million page views, and we actually, this one email pitch we got acquired by Google in 2014. This is the pitch that I used a lot, where I ran a poll on a given topic. And this is a great thing to do if you're kind of out of ideas. You're like, Dimitri, I'm just doing sales, I don't have time to create data and stuff like that. You can quickly create a quick little poll people on, the best sales tool or something like that, or the best outreach tool to use, and then use that data to pitch some bloggers or some journalists to get that, feature in TechCrunch or wherever you're trying to get featured in, just by having the data on your side. So this is how, I built pretty much this entire company from nothing, and we got acquired through using this type of data. And this type of data, a lot of times, you just have like juicy data or radical bias and dating preferences. This is not necessarily like in your sales space, but it's just another example of how an article could shape, like this kind of pitch around, like maybe I spent 2 days running a survey on this stuff, and I surveyed 1,000 people on Twitter or something. Then this would, get into, the Daily Dot or something like that. And then you can use the Daily Dot to close your deal, right? So running a bit of a poll or a survey is a very easy tactic to get an article published. So you spend 2 or 3 days, you get some data and you pitch that as a way to get in these publications. And the last one is the easiest one, which you guys should be able to do, and you should be doing one of these a month at least. Just interview someone. That's all. You guys are great sales folks. You guys are doing some sales. You know a lot of people. Interview somebody who people look up to. In my world, it's people like Neil Patel and Tim Ferriss and, folks that, Winklevoss twins have been in the news lately because of Bitcoin madness. So, I go out there and I try and score an interview with them, whether it's face-to-face or one-on-one over Skype, whatever it may be. You publish that interview, then whoever is mentioning that person is a person that you can chat with, right? So it naturally builds a relationship not only with them, but people talking about them. So.
And also, it's tying association, right? When people look at Dimitri, they look and they see that, and now Dimitri's on a whole different level, right? Oh, this is Dimitri. Oh, wait, this is Dimitri and Neil Patel, right? You see that the mindset shift is like, Dimitri just went from just being another Dimitri to being, oh, he's Dimitri with Neil Patel, Tim Ferriss. This guy's the real deal. I want to have a conversation with Dimitri because those are people that I look up to. So he's got to also be credible and somebody that I could want to have a sales conversation with. The psychology, right? I mean, and it's simple stuff.
Yeah. Dimitri, I got to go back to the data thing real quick because that's like so huge. And I think like if you're a sales rep, like take some initiative and reach out to some influential TechCrunch writers or anybody who may be looking for data journalism and just pitch them with some ideas. Like if you work at a SaaS company, there's millions of things you can use to get data about your product. Like we partner with a company named Gong, and they're like leading the way for getting interesting sales data about conversations. They find all sorts of things like, this stuff happens in the first 30 seconds of a call, and if the ratio of listening to talking is at this point, you're not going to close your deal or whatever. So like if you're a salesperson at a SaaS company, you have probably product people at your disposal, a data science team, analytics team at your disposal, and you can get the ball started by getting validation for this. So if you reach out to a journalist and say, would you be interested in this type of data? Think of interesting data points that you can pull from your product. Then say, if that journalist comes back and say, yes, we would love that, then you take that to your marketing team, your head of sales, whoever that you might need to get sign off on this and say, look, I have validation that they want this. This is a huge opportunity for us. It shows that you took the initiative to make something happen, and then you can make it collaborative so that you don't feel the stress and burden of having to do all this on your own.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, data is just so easy to just quickly scrap together. If you don't have any data at all, just do a quick poll or survey or something. It doesn't have to be 1,000 people. It could be 100 people. Any data is a great way to get featured anywhere in any blog or publication or get noticed by anybody, because if they're writing about it, you should be kind of talking about it, and they should be mentioning your brand with it. So if your brand needs to be mentioned somewhere, this is a natural way to do so. Is just show data around something. And then, interviewing somebody is like, you want people synonymous with your brand to be featured, to be talked about and mentioned by press, by other people, and you want yourself to be associated with them, and that's why you would interview them. And, it doesn't have to be a video interview like this. Some of you guys, you're in sales, you're like, oh, I can't set this up. Well, you can just email them and ask for a quote and put them in a blog post, right? And it could be about anything, right? Right back in the day when Facebook stock wasn't public yet, I asked people, what would you buy it for? When do you think it'll go public? Do you think, what were your predictions about it? Right now, Bitcoin is all the rage. So, I mean, this is something you can ask people who you look up to in a blog post or something. It doesn't have to be about sales, right? It could be something more that attracts other folks as well. So just a quick little blurb like this, again, you're promoting them on your blog, you're striking up a conversation, and you become synonymous with these people as well. Like when people are mentioning you and them together, just a great way to build exposure. So yeah, if you guys remember anything from it, from this talk, personalized conversation starter, would you say it out loud is the big test here. So in all those examples we looked at, would you say this email out loud? And if the answer is yes, go ahead and send it out along. The first one was a HERO or Help a Reporter Out, or these different press opportunities for either podcasts or different publications. You can kind of try these out on your own, or you can use the link to try this out, or you can just go and sign up on helpreporter.com. The next one was Quora. We saw how promoting somebody and in an answer can get you publicity and help you strike a conversation with somebody who might promote you on their blog or their publication, a podcast, or what might be. So first, you start a conversation with an influencer, promote their content and your own as well. You can get it republished, get some SEO traffic from it as well. And, of course, data insights. This is what we were just talking about now. Running a little survey, a little poll, and then getting that published somewhere in publications or get it mentioned by an influencer or so. And you're doing all of this just to make that sales process sing, like just smooth, just get those people asking you what you do, right? This just makes it much smoother, right? Interviewing somebody and getting that sales process much smoother and easier for yourself. So this last one, the interviewing somebody, we just chatted about as well. So would love, if you guys want to partner up in the next 10 minutes with somebody and start doing this, or if you don't have a team and you just want to kind of jump in and do it on your own, you can ask questions. We'd love to hear questions from you as well.
We do have some questions, Dimitri. Speaking of questions, maybe we'll go through some of them real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So here's one. Hey, Dimitri, kudos on the Ashton Kutcher Connect. Just a quick question. Tim Ferriss is also not a guy who somebody can engage with very easily. So I wanted to know if there was any difference in approach to get him on the line, and even someone like Ron Conway for that matter. Did you also follow the same approach to try and get Tim Ferriss to get back to you?
Yeah, so it's funny, Ron Conway, Tim Ferriss, really hard guys to get a hold of. So again, I did research around Tim's specific schedule, and at the time, Tim was promoting his book. Now, this was way before Titans of Giants, so this was I think this was still 4-Hour Body. I think that was the book that he was writing, 4-Hour Body. And he was promoting his book, and he was trying to get a lot of publicity for it. So he's doing a lot of speaking gigs and trying to basically get on a lot of podcasts and shows. And so I said, I reached out and I said, we have an audience of 500 people that would potentially get your email, and I want to just promote you to them. And if you had a pre-recorded type of a deal where you can kind of chat about design, because these are a lot of designers, I'd love to just kind of send it along to them. So I wasn't hinting, or I wasn't pushing them towards the speaker series, but I included a link and I said, listen, it is a speaker series just in case. And so because he was promoting his book at that time, and because he was in Silicon Valley and I was tracking him down, and I knew that he was back because I saw that he had flown back to San Jose, and he was there for the next few weeks, I said, listen, would love to promote you, but I know you're a busy guy, so it doesn't have to be in person. Just send us a recording of video, you talking about what your book is about and how it relates to designers, and I'll send it along. That kind of thing. So it was basically free traffic for him. And so he responded saying, hey, would love to, I see this as like a live event. You guys interviewed these other folks, pretty well-known folks. Would love, to do something in person if you want. And so that's how I started talking with him. And with Ron Conway, just like with most of these folks, I can show you on they still have this Zerb soapbox going, but like most of these folks that I found and started building relationships with, a lot of them I just one by one started creating this type of approach, this outreach approach. So I would say, listen, I've had this guest on, and we mentioned you. So during the conversation with every guest I have on my show, I would say, listen, I had the Winklevoss twins. And then when I'd be, reaching out to Joe Gabia from Airbnb, I'd say, when we're talking with, Winklevoss twins, of course, mention Airbnb, huge fan of you guys, and so I knew that one guest would know the other. But basically, I started building up the ladder and slowly. And so my very first guest, not a lot of people known him. And then he knew somebody who was a little bit, Tapulous was a bit of a bigger brand than him. So I was like, all right, we'll kind of step up the game there, and I get that first intro. Now, with these two guests, I got to Technorati. Technorati was kind of a big deal back in the day. And so once I got to him, then that opened up doors to User Voice and Justin TV. So I kind of used each guest to kind of get to the a bit higher up the ladder with some of these folks.
It's baby steps. Baby steps, right? I mean, you're not going to start, if you start something like this, it could be your first guest doesn't have to be big, because really what you're looking for as a salesperson is you're just looking for good content, right? That adds value. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be a big name to add a ton of value. I mean, I've got on some podcasts that were super small podcasts that, all of a sudden I'm like, these guys don't even have an audience. I know that some influencers say, well, I don't want to go on that podcast because they don't have an audience, right? Well, my thing is, I find that the smallest podcasts are the ones getting started, are the ones that promote you the most. Yep. And the next thing you know is 2 years later, their podcast is blown up and they bring you back on. And now all of a sudden it's like one of your biggest podcast interviews. So in sales, like a lot of salespeople say, I don't want to write content. Well, perfect. Don't write content. Go get on smaller podcasts and just talk. I mean, it takes 45 minutes to go on a podcast. And the best part about it is you get to increase your sales acumen, right? You understand how to articulate things better because you're challenged in a way you've never been challenged because you've got an audience. And, you have all of this content now that you can leverage to take little bits and pieces of that content and curate it and put it on your social channels, because most salespeople don't have anything that they can even, use to promote themselves on social to show how much of an expert they are. So all this publicity stuff is just giving you little pieces to put in the bigger pie, so that in the long run, not only do you create more sales conversations, but you create more credibility. And the worst thing that happens, which we can all attest to, is people come to you and want to have a conversation, right? What do you do? What do you do? I see you everywhere. Well, Dimitri, I see you everywhere. You're everywhere. What do you do? Can you tell me about it? I'd love to be a part of it.
Exactly. So we have some more questions, so I want to try to get them in before 1 o'clock. So the next one is from Paul in Berlin. He says, how do you actually use the interviews? Do you just promote them on your social? Do you put them on your blog? What do you actually do to promote the interviews? Now, I know that can be used as a way to revive cold leads that have went dark. That's like the first thing that comes to my mind. But Dimitri, I'll let you take a swing at this and let Paul from Berlin know, how do you actually use the interviews once you have them?
Yeah, so Paul, the first thing I do is I actually publish them on my blog, and what I do is I look at who has talked about that person. Now, somebody asked about Tim Ferriss. Everybody talks about Tim Ferriss. Really, really hard to kind of get him as a person, a person that you're going to interview. But, if it's somebody like, Tom Conrad, who is now at, I think he's at Snap now, Snapchat. But back in the day, he was CTO at Pandora. Not a lot of people have talked about him directly, but a lot of people have talked about Pandora. So when people are talking about the brand attached to that person you're interviewing, they are a perfect person to start a conversation with. So this could be a potential customer of yours who you want to pitch and sell, right? So you say, listen, I saw you mention Pandora. I just interviewed the CTO of Pandora. We talked about this, that, and the other. Actually, what do you think about this specific thing we discussed at 15 minutes into the interview here? And this is a great way to start conversations if you're doing email outreach to sell something, right? But the other way I use it is also trying to become synonymous with that person. So if it's, founder of WordPress, I want to use the quotes I have from that interview to pitch to other bloggers and journalists who are just seeking for this person to interview them or quote them. So if they're writing about, how to build a website in 24 hours using WordPress with this new whatever functionality that came out. And I have an interview with Matt. What I do to prep for the interview is I look through what are the hottest topics about this brand, about WordPress right now, and then I would interview him and I ask those questions, and then essentially I use his responses in the interview when I publish them to pitch my own blog, my own website, my own brand, or just myself directly and say, listen, I'm Dimitri. I just interviewed Matt, the guy who founded WordPress, and you guys talk about WordPress a lot. You guys written 3 articles in the last 2 weeks on WordPress. I have a few cool quotes you guys could use to actually improve your articles, or improve the old ones, or maybe create new ones. Would you be at all interested? And so I use the content in 2 ways. One is to get more exposure for myself, those third-party validation from different publications, and at the same time I use it for just straight-up cold email outreach to people who mention that person, or they mention the brand itself. And it works for both. I use it for both.
And a strategy for sales that you're talking about, because I know I try to preference this back to like the sales analogy, but like if you have a podcast and you're in sales, or your company has a podcast, if you want to get into a sales conversation with them, the best way to do that is to give them something before you ask them for something. And the best thing you can do is offer people exposure to a potential new business, which is exactly what podcasts allow you to do. If it's the right audience, you reach out to a potential buyer and say, hey, come on and talk about yourself.
Yeah.
And if your first conversation is in a podcast letting somebody talk about themselves, the law of reciprocity would tell you that at the end of that podcast, the next thing that'll happen is they'll go, what do you do and how can I help you? Because we're just tuned as human beings to not get people to put us first. And you just let these things naturally happen and you have fun doing it.
Yeah, definitely. You build like a relationship with them basically by just interviewing them. So
Exactly. And we got one final question before we sign off here. This is from Tom Tobin. Dimitri, what would you do? What are the top 1 or 2 things you would do to get an interview with yourself?
with myself. So I mean, again, I would go back and research every kind of, not every, but essentially, what do I know that I would know as well. So like if I'm reaching out to anybody, I'm trying to find common ground because I want to research and see how I can start that conversation that's not awkward. When I say it out loud, it cannot be awkward and self-promotional. So essentially, I'd look at my own blog posts and I look at my own Twitter profile, LinkedIn profile, and just make a note of like, he shared that article about reaching out to press. He shared that article about SEO. 2 things I know a bit about. Now, how would I start a conversation and reference some of them and promote some of them? So essentially, you want to either in-debt somebody on something or promote them to a point where you they have to respond to you. So
like earning the right. You're talking about just earning the right to ask for something. I mean,
right.
The thing is, the easiest way to get a conversation with somebody is, figure out what they do and ask them to show you what they do, so you can see who you can tie that into. I mean, the best emails I ever get are, Jack, I want to talk to you about your online training program, right? I just want to talk to you about it, and I'm going to take it. I want to see how I can get more info to help get other people in my network to take this, right? Dimitri, you have a SaaS tool, or you have a tool that helps us get publicity. Can you just show it to me? Because I know I've got clients that are always looking to get publicity. I'd like to figure out how the heck I can get them publicity and see how you tie into that so I can get you intros. This is the easiest way to get a conversation sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a phenomenal webinar today. We're just about out of time. It's the 1 o'clock mark, so we've got to wind this thing down. But Dimitri, before we sign off, why don't you let people know where they can hit you up, where they can find you, and maybe they'll ask you for an interview. Who knows? But
cool.
let them know where they can find you.
Well, just go to justreachout.io. There's like a hi link there. You can check out the tool, but also there's going to be a contact info there and everything. So
sounds good. Well, concluding with that, thank you guys for signing in to another Sales Hacker webinar. We really appreciate you being with us. If you couldn't stay till the end, of course, you'll have the, even if you did stay all the way to the end, you'll have the recording sent to your email, and we hope to catch you next time. And if you have any feedback on the webinar or any additional questions, you can hit up me or Jack. Just search me on LinkedIn, Gaetano Denardi, or search Jack Kosakowski on LinkedIn, and we'll be in touch. So thanks again, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
All right. All right. See you.